god, like how could you like not like Dark Souls?
Correction, I hate Dark Souls.
I don't even know how anyone subscribed to you. Ugh.
Ugh, back at ya.
If you were like so totally beautiful like me, then you might be able to actually play a game. Who do you think that you are?
I'm Miss Bubbles.
I just can't believe it. You are such a faker.
Another sleepless night for me.
When Miss Bubbles asked me what my biggest RPG regret was, I initially made a video about that one time I fired a rocket launcher at an ice cream truck. But then she got back to me and said she meant a role-playing game, not a rocket-propelled grenade.
You know what? I'm unsubscribing right now. That'll show ya.
Alright, this is getting out of hand. Hello, you gorgeous human being. It's Miss Bubbles. Today I'm sharing the stage with 10 of my favorite content creators who also happen to have a few RPG regrets that they want to share with you. Now, in case for some reason the skit was not obvious enough, this video is not to trash talk any games or publishers or your personal taste. It's simply us sharing opinions about RPGs that we just happen to regret buying. And the reason why my friends and I decided to make this video is because it just feels like these days you cannot have a civil conversation if you happen to not like a game that somebody loves, or if you happen to love a game that somebody else hates. And for that, the whole point of this video is to invite you to share your opinion of RPG regrets that you have, and you will have a safe space to just talk about it and have a civil discussion. So without further ado, let's start with Riku.
So Pokemon Violet is not only a game I regret getting, but also the game that made me question whether or not the series is for me, which is a shame because Pokemon in general has this very strong sense of unparalleled adventure that most other games don't capture in the same way. The process of picking your starter and setting out on your quest while exploring new areas and meeting new people elicits this incredible feeling that reminds me of going on an exciting field trip as a kid. However, with the newest release, that feeling didn't last long because of a few reasons. The first being that Pokemon Violet runs really badly on the Switch to the point where it almost breaks the immersion. I mean, the frame rate is terrible, the visual quality is inconsistent, and looking at distant landscapes really highlights how bland and off-putting the world looks. And this is coming from someone who doesn't care about graphics that much. I understand that Pokemon Violet is bigger in scope compared to the previous generations, and in the pursuit of that open world, some things had to be cut back, but this to me points towards there being issues with Game Freak not being given enough time to implement everything they might want to in a timely manner, seeing as how these games release pretty much annually. Granted, not everything is bad. I found that the character models are a massive improvement over previous generations, and per usual, the monster designs are great too. Not to mention that the music is always really good in these games, and Violet is no exception. When it comes to the core gameplay, however, things don't exactly get better. While collecting new Pokemon is always fun, the combat itself really isn't to me. It's a little bit on the sluggish side because of its tendency to read everything out, like status effects or whether an attack was effective or not. It was something I could look past for the first two Pokemon games I've played with Let's Go and Sword, but this time I found myself losing a bit of my patience with it. What sucks is that this isn't really something that can change because a massive component to these games is the multiplayer, and any major changes to the flow of battle will affect everything when it comes to competitive play. I will say that Pokemon Legends Arceus did some interesting things with the combat, like allowing you to roam about the field while your monster fights, and considering that it doesn't have competitive play, there should be a lot more room to experiment going forward, so I may keep an eye out for future Legends games. That being said, those are just a few reasons why I regret buying Pokemon Violet, yet remain hopeful that future titles can grab me.
So Pokemon Violet is actually my RPG regret as well. I call it Pokemon Violent. It caused me the most severe migraine for 2 days straight. I couldn't play a single game. I couldn't look at a screen. The motion sickness got to me and I just did not like that game, and I ended up selling it. So yeah, that's my experience with Pokemon Violet. Let's hear from David, who also looked really good with that wig on, if I do say so myself.
Hi everybody out there, I'm David over at the channel David Vink, and thank you so much Miss Bubbles for having me on your channel. Games I regret? Huh, I can actually talk about this topic like all day long. As a matter of fact, I have many times in the past. But it's always such a fun topic to revisit, and the game that came immediately to mind for me this time was Star Ocean 5. Day 1 edition. I really got screwed with this one. I just cannot tell you how excited I was for this one when it was first announced. Star Ocean has always been one of my favorite series of action RPGs. I love the sci-fi adventure feel, the multiple branching paths, the private actions, and the different storylines depending on who you choose to join your party. Not to mention the multitude of planets that you're able to go to. Many people thought that the series was dead after The Last Hope, and 7 long years went by. But then, Integrity and Faithlessness was announced and the people rejoiced. Star Ocean was back, they all exclaimed. And so, everybody went out in droves to buy this on day 1, only to be ready to drop it in the trash can on day 2. Not only are there not multiple planets to explore, but there's really only like 3 whole areas and 3 stupid towns. The story is completely nonsensical, the battle system is chaotic, to say the least, the characters are shrill, ugly, and annoying, and it only lasts like 15 hours total. And believe me, it would only last like 5 if it wasn't 90% backtracking too. After this game, everybody thought that Star Ocean was dead in the water, but thankfully at least, it did get revived with Star Ocean 6. And thank you again so much, Miss Bubbles, for having me, and for everybody else out there, have a good day.
I never played Star Ocean 4, so I cannot comment on it, but I have been eyeing the new one, so if anybody played it, please let me know if you recommend it. And now let's hear from the king himself, King Narukami.
Hey guys, it's King Narukami. The game that I regret buying most is a game called Monarch. It's a tactical RPG. It's developed by ex-Shin Megami Tensei developers, and so it should have been a home run with me. However, I didn't inherently dislike the game, rather it kind of felt way below expectations for me. I expected this SMT driven RPG and it just didn't fit for me. I like the characters, the gameplay was kind of the music at times was really good. I mean, really good. I cannot overstate that. And not to mention the Switch port of this, because I got the Switch version, ran like absolute garbage. Like, we're talking single digit frame rates almost outside of combat in the wide open areas. It's an absolute abomination how this was ported to Switch. But what really got me about this, why I regret purchasing it the most, is because I bought the $100 collector's edition from NIS America store, and I just ended up not liking the game that much and ended up selling it, so my hype level really died down. This is the game that made me realize I don't need collector's editions for every game that I play. I might not even like the game. Maybe try out the game if there's a demo, purchase a collector's edition if I really like it at a later date. It really opened my eyes to say I really don't need to be spending my money on these expensive ass collector's editions. And so, like I said, it's not that I dislike the game, but overall I did enjoy various aspects of it. It's just the fact that it was really a lot of money for me to spend at the time, and I really regret at the time buying that collector's edition. So in hindsight, I kind of guess it really helped me in the long run. Monarch taught me a valuable lesson. But yes, that is the game that I regret most purchasing. Thank you, Mrs. Bubbles, for having me part of this amazing collaboration with so many great content creators, and I'll see you guys on the next video that I'm in.
Monarch is another game that I have no comment about. I remember seeing the reviews flood in and I was like, you know what? This game is just not for me. I'm gonna skip it, and I really don't regret not buying it. Next up, we have the RPG man himself who made me laugh out loud when he sent me the first part of his video. Jordan, let us know your RPG regret.
Do need to have a little vent about how Suikoden 4 crushed my soul as a teenager. I was a huge fan of Suikoden 1 and 2. I was denied 3 because it never released in Europe, but there was a shining light on the horizon because Suikoden 4 was going to release in Europe, and oh boy was I excited. It took a while for the heartbreak to set in. I was in denial for about 10 hours. I was just waiting and waiting and waiting for it to get good and also actually become a Suikoden game, because it's not. If you don't know Suikoden, they are games where you can recruit 108 heroes into your rebellion of sorts, and while 4 does retain that aspect, it sucked pretty much everything else that made it great out. Instead of having 6 characters in your battle party, now you had 4, and the castle. Oh yeah, the castle. I was just waiting for the time I would naturally get my sweet ass castle to acquire and upgrade, and it just didn't happen. I'm not showing it because I ain't playing that far just for this cameo, but you do get a boring, dumb boat, which wouldn't be so bad, but it's literally the most miserable part of the game. And finally, for this rant, she said no more than 2 minutes, the most unforgivable thing. What is with these goddamn shorts, my man? I don't care what decade or what world we are in, this ain't it, dude. I mean, you can't take a game seriously with a fashion sense like this. Imagine if Cloud Strife rocked up to Sephiroth wearing those. You'd want the meteor to end it all. Now, Miss Bubbles did tell me privately that she wanted to make this video purely to incite violence and hatred amongst the RPG community, because let's face it, that's all you're good at. And I just realized probably none of you know who I am, and maybe you don't realize that I'm joking. I'm joking. But I think with Suikoden 4, I think this might be something we can all agree on. And even those who say they like it, I'm convinced they're still in denial 20 years on. Acceptance is the first step to recovery, okay? Suikoden 4 is not a good RPG.
I only learned that Suikoden exists last year, but I am excited for the remasters. But I gotta admit, I was a little bit shocked that one of the entries in the series is actually bad, so it was very interesting to learn about this. Now, do y'all like chicken fillets? Because I've got a talking one for you, so let's hear from Chicken Fillets himself.
Hello bubbly people, Chicken Fillets here, and thank you to Miss Bubbles for having me on to discuss an RPG that I regret purchasing. Well, that game is Fire Emblem Engage. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to caca-poo-poo-pee-pee shower all over this game, because quite frankly, Fire Emblem Engage is a decent game. It was rated very highly by critics. The graphics on Nintendo Switch for this game is phenomenal, the music is class, and with all Fire Emblem games, the combat is immense. So, what is my actual issue and why do I regret buying this game? Well, in one word, it's the story, or their lack of. So, to basically sum up the story, there's not really much of it. Well, up until God knows how many chapters without spoiling it. For me, the way that this game works is essentially, I'm the good guy, I'm going to fight every bad guy possible, and then every bad guy, basically, you beat them and they go,
"Can I be your friend? Please? Please? Even though you've just beaten me up, can you be my friend?"
and you as the divine dragon just go, "Aye, okay, we'll be friends." Nah, this just is not fun. That is not a decent story. There's no conflict. Can you tell this game has annoyed me? As I said before, Fire Emblem Engage is a decent game. Just with an RPG, I'm looking for a story which grips me. This doesn't have it for me. But what I want to know is, what RPG do you regret purchasing? Let myself and Miss Bubbles know down there in the comments. You know what to do. And if you want to be kept very bubbly, then make sure to subscribe to Miss Bubbles and also like and share the video, please. This has been Chicken Fillets, and until next time, tatty bye!
When it comes to Fire Emblem Engage, I played it a little bit with you guys on stream, and after that I just never picked it up. I got distracted. I'm always doing the and jump from game to game, and then again and jump to a new game, and then again. And the fact that this game is a tactical RPG does cause me a little bit of anxiety, but I do plan on playing it a little bit more just to make up my own mind about it. Now, would this be a Miss Bubbles collab if we don't have the bestie Taylor Rooney in here with us? Hell no. So let's hear from the Gaming Shelf.
What's going on, everyone? This is Taylor from the Gaming Shelf, and thanks so much, Miss Bubbles, for having me on to talk about an RPG that I regret buying and playing. Now, if you follow my channel, you probably know that my pick is going to be The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel, but my regret isn't quite what you might think it is. Now, I originally played Cold Steel 1 on Vita, but I played it immediately after finishing Persona 5, and in comparison, it's an inferior game in almost every way. But people kept coming back and saying how amazing it was and that I just didn't get it. And thankfully, years later, I got a remaster on PlayStation 4 with tons of new features, higher resolution, turbo mode, the works. And with some time between my original playthrough, I thought it's time to try again and give a fresh perspective on this game. But here's where my regret comes in. Now, I have massive OCD when it comes to my gaming shelf, and for the North America release, it was only going to be a steelbook, and I hate steelbooks. I love looking at my shelf and having all the spines look exactly the same. So I ended up importing the European version of Cold Steel on PS4, but that made it more expensive, of course. So I played it through all the way again, and I still hated it. The game is just so slow, and people say it's half a game with Cold Steel 2 being the other half, but 60 hours of setup is just ridiculous to me. The game is much more tolerable on turbo mode though, with being able to speed it up, making the battles go faster, riding across some of those bigger areas a lot faster, and I I will say the combat is quite good and engaging. I had a lot of fun with it, especially when it came to boss battles. And the music overall is pretty fantastic as well. Falcom never disappoints in that department. That said, I still didn't really enjoy it. It just wasn't really for me. Like I said, it was just way too slow. And I don't think I've ever bought a game that I hate twice, but hey, I guess there's a first time for everything. Anyway, that's my game that I regret buying and playing. Thanks, Miss Bubbles, for having me on this awesome collab, and I hope to see you all over on my channel.
You know, it's funny how Taylor does not vibe with the Trails series at all, but we have in this same collab Emily, who is in love with the series, and I feel like this is the whole point of this video. It's so weird that I have to go ahead and say this, but we can be friends, we can be civil, and we can just share our own opinions and just be respectful about it without having to attack each other because we don't have the same opinion about games. It's just, is it just me, or is it like really weird that you have to say that? Because I've seen what's been going on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube and everywhere. People just attack each other. They're relentless. I'm like, can we just love each other? Anyways, we can rant about that in the comment section, but let's hear from Emily and see which RPG she regrets buying.
Hi, this is Emily from Orbology, and the game that I regret buying, or rather putting on my birthday/Christmas wish list, is probably a little bit of a divisive choice, but it is Crosscode for the Nintendo Switch. And I particularly regret playing this on my Nintendo Switch Lite. But Crosscode is a very highly regarded 2D action RPG with gorgeous pixel art, where you get sucked into this big MMO RPG world sometime in the distant future. It involves a ton of action gameplay with both shooting and melee attacks, as well as a lot of puzzle solving. So over the years, I've heard nothing but praise for this indie title on multiple platforms, and how if you really enjoy the top-down Zelda-type gameplay style, you'll for sure really enjoy this game. Unfortunately, this is not the case for me, especially playing on the Switch Lite, where I found the controls extremely awkward. And even though I tried to remap where things were, I found trying to shoot your projectile gun just very frustrating, and it just really did not work well, I think, on the Switch Lite. And regarding the puzzle mechanics throughout the game, I found that also very tedious, especially when the game would reuse a lot of the same precision projectile shooting. Honestly, I just really did not enjoy those parts because of just how tedious they were and repetitive. So all in all, I think Crosscode has a lot going for it, and it's a highly ambitious game with a lot of cool elements that I think in theory would work for me, but unfortunately it really did not work for me on the Switch Lite. I might try to give it another go on another platform, or maybe using a Pro Controller in the future, but as it stands now, unfortunately playing this game in handheld mode on the Switch Lite is a big regret of mine, and I really wish I didn't include this in my birthday/Christmas wish list, because I would feel really bad getting rid of this game after being gifted to it by a family member. So I'll hold on to this for a little bit longer and see how this goes using a Pro Controller, but I don't have too high of hopes.
This is yet another RPG that I never tried. My community did tell me to stay away from it because it has a lot of puzzles, and they know what I like and don't like at this point, so I know that I probably will not like it. And the next RPG is from the Game Dimension, Benson.
Hi, my name is Benson. I run the Game Dimension here on YouTube, Benson Dimension on Twitch, and I'm here today to talk about an RPG I regret playing/buying. This topic was actually really hard, since anything I could possibly regret, I just try out on something like Game Pass, but there is one game in recent memory that comes from the monster catching side of RPGs that I found to be disappointing to buy at full price. Temtem by Crema. Temtem is an MMO monster catching RPG that admittedly has great ideas that can catch your attention alongside stellar monster design. The stamina bar is designed to help you figure out what moves to use without overexerting yourself and losing HP, bringing a refreshing idea to turn-based battles. My main problem lies here, however. Stamina, along with synergizing certain moves to be more powerful, is what's supposed to keep things strategic, and this does work for PvP, sure, but you have to catch and trade decent Temtems beforehand, which means progressing in the world through the story. Tamers, even late game, always overexert themselves, which leads to losing their health on top of wasting a turn afterwards to get stamina back, leaving them open to bombardments, and even if you overexert yourself, you'll still land the finishing blow most of the time. Because of this, type advantages and set number values replacing RNG feel more like a suggestion rather than a solid chance to build your team's success cleverly. Add on an uninteresting story, some world design issues, and lacking post-game content, Temtem just sadly feels like a subpar RPG that doesn't get to shine in the meat of the game. I absolutely respect the creative ideas put into play to try to shake up the main gameplay we're used to in monster catching RPGs, but you have to make sure those ideas work in harmony with every aspect of a game, especially an MMO that requires you to be online at all times and can crash at any moment due to internet issues or server issues in the first place. They are releasing a free-to-play game for competitive battles called Temtem Showdowns, which is great, but it doesn't exactly patch out the problems plaguing the battle system for non-competitive players. While it's not a completely regrettable play, Temtem ends up being a regrettable buy at full price for its all-around experience, even with it being around $40 at launch.
I was so excited to play Temtem, and I have to admit it was a disappointment for me as well. I talked about it in one of my videos. I will pin it for you in the comments. You can see where your frustrations are coming from, and I just did not vibe with the game either. I felt like this video just didn't have enough fruit in it, you know, so I asked Peach to join us. So Peach, tell us about your RPG regret.
What is good, beautiful people? It's your girl Peach, and the RPG that I regret buying is Sakuna of Rice and Ruin. In this game, you play as goddess Princess Sakuna, who is tasked with removing the demons from the Isle of Demons along with a group of humans. Now, before I tell you why I regret buying this game, I must say that this is still one of the prettiest JRPGs that I've played to date. Like, the soundtrack bangs, the art is gorgeous, and the time that I spent murdering demons was very satisfying. But unlike typical RPGs where you'd level up through, I don't know, farming dungeons for experience, in this game, all of your stats, including your health, are tied to the quantity of your rice and the quality of your rice, which you spend half the game farming. Now, as a lover of all things farming sim, you'd expect that this would be a pretty sweet mechanic. But why is farming the rice so hard? Like, it's not enough that you grow the rice. There's a whole plethora of things to consider, like how much yield, what fertilizer you're using, if you can add ingredients to the fertilizer, because they do expire. Like, did I mention your rice can get sick? Yeah, even if you have a solid rice recipe, you can get rice blight, mold might start growing, and God forbid the summer is too hot because it might just wipe out the entirety of your harvest. And whilst I accept the fact that it may be my smooth brain that is the issue rather than the mechanics of the game itself, I can't help but regret not watching a couple more reviews of the game prior to making the purchase. But let me know what you think. Do you think I'm being dramatic, or do you think that the mechanics really are all that deep?
I've had Sakuna in my backlog for such a long time. I was planning to play it soon this year, but after hearing what you said and about how high risk playing this game is, I think I'm just gonna push it down back into the backlog and just leave it till next year, because that sounds like a stressful experience. Even though the devil may never cry, the devil sure does have an RPG regret, and today we have Devil Never Cry joining us as well.
Tales of Zestiria was my first foray into the Tales of series. Having heard numerous great things about its predecessors, such as Tales of Vesperia or Tales of Symphonia, I eagerly jumped into the latest entry in the Tales series at the time, Tales of Zestiria. For those of you who don't know, Tales of Zestiria is an action RPG with real-time combat that follows an open-world layout. You follow the story of Sore, a human appointed as shepherd, as he travels throughout the land with his angelic beings, the Seraphim, as he is tasked with cleansing the malevolence that has taken root in his world. And therein lies the first issue that I had with this game. The story is incredibly predictable, even going by anime RPG standards, and the cast was pretty much forgettable. The main character is somewhat innocent and naive, and pretty much stays that way despite some major revelations throughout the story, leading it to fall quite flat. Looking beyond the story itself, the gameplay also fell short in a few key areas, the first of which being the layout. The open world was pretty much devoid of things to do other than fight. This didn't seem like too much of an issue within the first half of the game, the first 20 hours or so, but by the end of it, when you were forced to backtrack considerably, it could definitely feel quite repetitive and barren. The dungeons themselves, on the other hand, pretty much flew off the other end of the spectrum, where they were incredibly linear in design and absolutely stacked with annoying puzzles and environmental machinations that felt frustrating to go through as opposed to cathartic to complete. Special mention goes out to the camera system, which often had a habit of doing whatever it wanted during combat, hindering you instead of helping you. Ultimately, there are plenty of Tales of games that are definitely worth playing, but unfortunately for me, Tales of Zestiria wasn't one of them.
The only Tales game that I've played is Tales of Berseria. I did not like it, so it is an RPG regret for me. So I have no knowledge of how Zestiria is, but I have been playing a little bit of Arise. I must say the combat is just so hard to understand, but the story seems intriguing enough, so I'm gonna keep trying. Let me know if you guys have a favorite Tales game in the comment section. So I'm gonna share my pick now. Honestly, I have so many RPG regrets that I can make another video just separately listing all of them. Like I have Octopath Traveler, Ni no Kuni Wrath of the White Witch, Persona 5, which is the only game that I do plan to give another chance, Yakuza Like a Dragon, God Eater 3, Code Vein, Witcher 3. You seriously thought I would say that? I caught you off guard. That game is my heart and soul, okay? But let's be real, my RPG regret that I wanted to talk about today is Xenoblade Chronicles 2. This game is an absolute mystery for me. I have tried to replay it 3 times, I've watched so many YouTube videos, and I still have no idea how to play that game. The combat is just, how do you play it? Like, I just don't get it. The navigation and the map just made me want to pull my hair. And the craziest thing is that people tell me, oh, just give it like 25 to 30 hours and then you'll click with it. I'm like, listen, I don't have 25 hours to play something that I'm not enjoying. I wish I have that much time to just keep playing and playing and playing something that I'm just miserable with, but I just can't. I just am not meshing with it. I'm not gelling with it. We're not friends. And let's be real, I know I'm not the only person who does not like Xenoblade Chronicles 2, but I did purchase Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and plan to dive into it because it feels a little bit more beginner friendly for me. But enough about us. What is your RPG regret? Let us know in the comment section. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much to the content creators who came in and joined the bubbly stage. Please check out their channels. They're gonna be in the pinned comment. And of course, a thank you to my Patreon and YouTube channel Bubblies who make videos like this possible. Thank you for watching, and a shout out to the Game Dimension who was with us today, Jacob, Stephanie, Stephen, Dark One, and Jake Logan for going the extra mile. Until next time, stay bubbly.